Namaste and good morning, everyone. Today is Saturday, so our Gita day, and we are on chapter 17. And altogether, Gita has 18 chapters, so 17th chapter. And the title of this chapter is Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga. Traya means three, Vibhag means division, and Shraddha means faith. So we'll see that this chapter opens up with Arjun's question. So, but let's do some mantra recitation before we start our chapter. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritvarshini Bhagavati Mashtadashadhyayani Amb Tvam Anusandhame Bhagavad Gite Bhavatveshini Namo Astute Vyas Vishal Bhute Full Arvind Ayat Patra Netha येन तव्या भारत तैल पूर्णः प्रज्वलितो ज्ञान में प्रतिपा प्रपन्न पारिजाताये तोत्र वेत्र एक पाने ज्ञान मुद्राये कृष्णाये गीता अमृतुवे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोक्ता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूरमर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णं वंदे जगद्गुरुम् भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ चला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्य ग्रावती कृपेन वाणी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तनी सो तीर्णा खलु पांडवै रणधिक वर्तका केशवा पाराशर्य वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थगंधोटकम नानाख्यानक केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपदय रह पेपिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिम यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः सुनवन्ति दिव्यस्तवे वेदै सांग क्रमोपनिषदै गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यानवस्थि तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. So chapter number 17, and this chapter opens with some doubts. Is it sufficient if one lives with faith, a life of good conduct and noble aspirations? Or is it necessary that one must know the scriptures? Earlier also in Bhagavad Gita, more than one occasion, this faith or the Shraddha has been described as the fuel required for the seeker to soar higher. Shraddha. So Arjun has every right to raise a question whether even without the knowledge of the scriptures, blind faith alone can take the seeker far. So faith, we got to understand what faith is. Faith is the content and the very essence of the equipments of a human's whole living. Faith is the one which really gives us direction, dash, and destination for our determination. So instead of directly answering the question, Lord Krishna takes this opportunity to give a thorough exposition of faith as seen in the various fields of our endeavors. Physical indulgences, which is called ahar. Dedicated activities, which is called yajna. Self-denial or self-control, which is called tap. And charity, dan. We'll see that Lord Krishna touches upon beautifully in all those areas of our life. But first he explains how this Shraddha or the faith is of three kinds. According to the nature of our temperament, It could be sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. Just like we've been learning about it in the previous chapters also. When we study this chapter closely, we can definitely direct our activities away from the influence of the lower urges, and we can guide ourselves towards the higher pursuits. So in the very first verse, Arjuna asks, those who, setting aside the ordinances of the scriptures, perform sacrifice with faith, what is their condition, O Krishna? Is it a sattva, rajas, or tamas? Injunctions of the scripture or those textbooks are not generally available for all people. And even when they are made available, very few have the intellectual capacity to understand them. So that's why Arjuna is asking this question. A sincere seeker might have a great faith in the higher way of life and a deep devotion to the ideal preached and propounded generally by all the scriptures of the world. So that's why this question. And the answer of the Lord is exhaustive and comprehensive. And let's see what he's saying in verse number 2. He says, threefold is the faith of the embodied, which is inherent in their nature. Nature means the swabhav. The sattvic, pure, rajasic, passionate, tamasic, dark. He says, hear this from me. So the Shraddha itself is of three kinds. You can call it divine, which is sattvic, undivine, which is rajasic, and diabolic, which is tamasic. So three categories. Shraddha determines the texture of our impressions in us. That's what Sabhav is, impressions left by our past actions. And as we know, the actions are not just the physical actions, they are the words we speak, the thoughts which we carry. All of them are actions, they are karma. So all of them they command our view of life. Our desires, our thoughts and actions are charted by our view of life. As our inner disposition, so are we. So that means we are according to our swabhav. The more a person identifies himself with the physical sheath, the more crystallized becomes his ego. So the temperaments that rule the behavior of a humans are three in number. The good, the passionate, and the dull, if you want to use those terms. And why should we take into consideration these temperaments at all? And try to understand the types of the faith and their play in life. Lord Krishna says in verse number 3, to answer that question, the faith of each is in accordance with his nature, O Arjuna. The man consists of his faith. As a man's faith is, so is he. So it's very difficult to say whether faith orders the nature or the nature prescribes the faith. Because they both are intimately wedded to other. Each obeys the other. However, the Gita declares that it is the nature in an individual that rules his faith. And if a faith can be broken and remolded, as it can be sometimes, Sometimes during our painful experiences, the nature of that person does faithfully obey the new faith. So it's not that you cannot change it. Anything in the nature is changeable. But generally speaking, the faith in each person takes the hue and quality of the stuff of his being, the predominating temperament in a person. So that's why it said, man is verily what his faith is. The achievements of life is ever colored by the type of faith, because that's how the individual pursues his or her activities. In verse number 4, he further explains, he says, Sattvic person worships the gods. The Rajasic, Yaksh or the Rakshas. The others, the Tamasic people, worship the ghosts and the hosts of booths, or the nature spirits like a black magic. So every man in life brings his entire devotion to offer at one altar or the other. Because that's how we seek the fulfillment from the benefits that accrue from our invocations. In the scripture language, this is called worship. That doesn't mean it's a ritualistic worship of some god or deity. The term worship has a wider implication. Every one of us is a worshipper at some altar chosen by us. Some devote themselves at the altar of sense objects, of wealth or the power. But the men of Sattvic temperament, because of their serene, composed, tranquil dispositions, seek their fulfillment at an altar of divinity, because they indicate the higher impulses and the nobler qualities of their being. Those are Sattvic kind of a person. So the idea here is that the choice of the altar will depend upon the silent demands of the heart of the devotee. And what does it mean, Yaksh and Rakshasa? Yaksh are described as the brothers of Kuber. Kuber is a deity of physical wealth, okay, heavenly wealth. And Rakshasa, beings of the strength and power. So Yaksh and Rakshas. So all men of action, ambitious of success and achievements, would seek the friendship of only the rich and the men of power and strength. Okay, so it's like, where do you want to have your relationships? Whom do you want to please? So the Tamasic people worship the Pret and the Bhoot, the low and the vicious powers, for the satisfaction of some of their low urges for vicious sense gratifications. So they are basically dead to the sweetness and the goodness in life. From the nature of a man's field of activity, we can to a large extent understand to what type he belongs. So that the spirit of devotion in men ever remaining the same, each will select according to the type of his Shraddha, the faith. His own altar of devotion has been shown in this verse. Then he says the wrong way of striving is what? Verse number 5. Those people who practice terrific austerities, that means very severe austerities, not enjoined by the scriptures. That means the scriptures don't say that. Given to hypocrisy and egoism, impelled by the force of lust and attachment, senselessly torturing all the elements in the body, and me also, because God resides in us when we do those kind of austerities. He says, you hurt me too. So me also who dwells within the body know that these to be of a demonic results. So in other words, no spiritual unfoldment can be expected from unintelligent expenditure of energy in wrong channels, merely because it is undertaken in the name of religion. So austerities should be scientific. Some people undertake severe austerities only as a show. So that means mentally they remain unfit for tapa. When the intentions are not pure, they will misuse the newfound strength in wrong channels, bring about their own self-destructive examples of Rakshas in Purans. Purans are the secondary scriptures in Hinduism. There are countless stories how the demonic people did the tapasya and they gained some powers because of that, but they used the power to hurt others. There are countless stories about that. It's almost like a person with the impure mind, very strong, will ultimately hurt others with that strength. So such unintelligent austerities not only oppress the elements which our physical body is made out of, but also the sacred and the divine Lord within. So basically what he's saying that extreme tap is stupid and it's condemned here. Intelligent control is tapa, not a cruel self-torture. Then he further talks about food also, worship also, again the austerity and the charity. Verse number 7, he says, the food also which is dear to each is threefold, as also the sacrifice, austerity, and charity giving. He says, here the distinction of these. So in verse number 7, he is enumerating the topics which he is going to discuss in the future verses over here. So very detailed analysis of our inner nature. And naturally, from the inner nature, outer expression is there too. So we find enumerated a series of symptoms by which we can correctly classify ourselves. Not others, ourselves. What is our temperament? Number 8, the food which increase life, purity, strength, health, joy, cheerfulness, which are savory and smooth, substantial and agreeable, are dear to the sattvic. So if you want to know what sattvic food is, here is the definition. Verse number 8 in this chapter. So by their own choice, sattvic people enjoy only foods that will be clean and wholesome with no check. There's no harm in the body to them. Okay? It gives them the health, joy, strength, cheerfulness. So not only that our inner nature is built by the type of the food consumed, but the inner nature in its turn commands our tastes. We find very often that we have developed an irresistible appetite for certain types of food. So that means the sattvic nature likes to have sattvic food. When we eat sattvic food, nature becomes sattvic too. It just goes hand in hand. And now in the verse number 9, he gives the definition of a rajasic food. The foods that are bitter, sour, saline, excessively hot, pungent, dry, and burning, are liked by the Rajasic and are productive of pain, grief, and disease. So sattvic food gives us a good physical health, mental cheerfulness. Rajasic food eventually gives us disease and pain also. Whenever we are diseased, sure, there's a pain. That's part of it. Rajasic food has strong flavor, dense taste, and the final reaction of these foods lead to the eater towards a life productive of pain, grief, and disease. Often we see that the texture of thought, when it's improved, the individual finds himself changing his taste also. Now let's look at the tamasic food. In verse number 10. That which is stale, tasteless, stinking, rotten, refuse, and impure is the food liked by the tamasic. So it's like a comprehensive report on the base and disgusting taste of a tamasic person is giving us in this verse. Now the yajna, because it's not only the food alone we eat, we perform the yajna also. Yajna is any action where we are trying to help others. That's called the yajna, where we remember God also. That sacrifice which is offered by men without desire for fruit and is enjoined by ordinance with a firm faith that sacrifice is a duty is sattvic. Okay? No fruit in the mind for yourself. You are trying to help others without any reward, without any fame, without any name. What should be the motivating factor there? This is my duty. I have taken a lot from this universe. I need to give back also. So when our actions are like that, that is a sattvic yajna. Because fruit belongs to the future periods of time, and to waste the present worrying over the future is very intelligent policy of existence. As required by ordinance, action in the world fall under 4 categories. Kammekaram, Nishidhkaram. Kammekaram means that you have certain desires to fulfill, and Nishidhkarams for forbidden actions. Yogi Guru says that don't go on that route. But the 2 types of actions you must do. Your daily duties, Nityakaran, and the special duties on special occasions, Naitikkaram. So the karam is divided into these 4. So obligatory duties we must do. So when we do the yajna, thinking that this is my duty to do, that is a sattvic yajna. Sacrifice is our duty. This is the motive that propels the good act in life. Mind becomes restful. Consciously, you feel happy because you are pursuing a line of action which is most conducive to the welfare of all. That's a sattvic way of living. And what is a rajasic yajna? The sacrifice which is offered seeking for fruit and for ostentation. No, that is to be a rajasic yajna. So there is expectations to yield a reward of name and fame, or even a cheerfulness for your own happiness. And what is a tamasic yajna then? Verse number 13, Krishna says, they declare that sacrifice to be tamasic, which is contrary to the ordinances. That means scripture say something and you do something different, in which no food is distributed, which is devoid of the mantras and gifts, which is devoid of faith. Why do we need to distribute food? Because we need to, when we do the yajna, it's a very big part of the yajna is that your detachment from this worldly things increases. So when we give away the charity also, the gifts, when we speak the mantras also, at that time we are connecting with the higher power. So if a person is doing none of this, that is tamasic. Because this kind of a sacrifice cannot at all bring any happiness, either to the performer on its or in its final analysis to his generation. Now the next part is tapasya. Tapasya. Tapasya can be sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. And tapasya is also with our words at a verbal level. Tapasya is at the thought level also. And tapasya is at the action level also. Okay, so let's see what he says. Worship of the gods, the twice born, the teachers and the wise. Purity, straightforwardness, celibacy, and non-injury are called the tap of the body. So at the bodily level, this is tap. So that means to maintain an attitude of attunement with a higher ideal, where the meditation develops in ourselves, the qualities of the meditated, that's called worship. That's how there's a growth in ourselves, that we are more moral, there's a more ethical unfoldment in us when we do tapasya like that. And there's a word over here, celibacy. In Sanskrit, it's called brahmacharya. The real meaning of brahmacharya is a constant reveling in the contemplation of the Brahma, brahmacharya. We got to understand that properly. And this is not possible unless our nature is turned away from bodily indulgence in sense objects, and our minds are trained to turn toward the spirit, the soul. But to learn how to conserve this energy, we got to learn how to redirect this energy into the higher fields. So what is a tap in the speech? Because that was a tapasya for the body. Because for all these, you need the body. Whether you want to serve your guru, or whether you want to be straightforward, or whether you want to learn something, it's a bodily. So now what is a tapasya of the speech? Speech which causes no excitement and is truthful, pleasant, and beneficial. And a practice of the study of the Vedas is called the austerity of the speech. Because we all know speech is a very powerful vehicle in human beings. Speech reflects the intellectual caliber and the mental discipline and physical self-control of the speaker. Unless a person is well formed at all these levels, his words will have no force, no magic in them. And speech is a constant activity of all. It is an outlet through which the greatest amount of our energies are wasted. That does not mean that we should keep quiet, because that could be disgustingly irritating. Not that kind of a mourn or a silence. Speak when it's needed. Speak truthfully. Speak beneficially. There's an art of using this power in the right way. Only then it will benefit everybody. So the technique of employing speech in the most profitable way is being indicated here in this verse. Verse number 15 I'm talking about. The words should neither be irritating nor obscene. The real touchstone to know whether we are speaking the right words or not is the reaction of the listeners as expressed on their faces. True, agreeable, beneficial. In Sanskrit, it's called Satyam Priyam Hitam. We all know when we lie, a lot of energy is wasted. It's not sufficient that the words in the speech should be honest and agreeable, but they should also be beneficial. Speech should not be wasted, according to Bhagavad Gita. So the first line is indicating the channels of economy possible in daily expenditure of speech. And the second line shows the avenues of investment. What we can gain from it. Now the top of the mind in verse number 16. Serenity of mind, good-heartedness, silence, self-control, purity of nature. This is called mental austerity. Okay, so austerity at the level of body, austerity at the level of speech, and now the mind. 5 noble values of life are given in this verse number 16. Serenity of mind can be gained only when our relationship with the world is put on a healthier basis of understanding, tolerance, and love. A seeker who has discovered for himself a divine ideal in the contemplations of which his mind forgets to run about, or his intellect overlooks to send out new desires, alone can be called a mana prasadaha, which he mentioned in this verse, serenity of the mind. So tapasvis are of different temperaments, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. So that means the bodily tapasya, further you can divide it into the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Okay, just remember that. So according to their governing temperaments, they act differently. So in the following verses, we'll see 3 types of tapasvins. This threefold austerity, practiced by steadfast people with the utmost faith, desiring no fruit, they call sattvic. Okay, so all those 3 at the bodily level, at the verbal level, at the thought level. If you are not doing that tapasya for a desired fruit, you are doing it because it's your duty. I want to keep my mind calm, it's my duty. I want to speak truthfully, beneficially, sweetly, because it's my duty. I want to serve the society, serve my guru, because it's my duty. Then it becomes sattvic. Remember that. Okay, so all 3 austerities practiced by steadfast. It's not that just doing it superficially. With the utmost faith also, desiring no fruit, they call it sattvic. Sattvic are those integrated people who refuse to worry about the future. They plan the future, but they don't want to waste the energy about the future. Because they know that in the harmony of nature, the future is the resultant of the total past modified by the present. They know that. And what is a Rajasic tap then? The austerity which is practiced with the object of gaining good reception, honor, and worship, and with hypocrisy is said to be Rajasic, unstable and transitory. So whenever we do that kind of a tapasya, with a view to gaining respect, honor, reverence, that is a Rajasic, because we are looking at a fruit, and then fruit may or may not come, and then there will definitely be a little irritation. So seekers belonging to this group perform their austerities mainly for their propaganda, not for inner development. Okay, so that's why Lord Krishna said such tap is unstable and transitory. Sometimes you might get respect, other times you may not. Tamasic tap. If that is bad, let's look at what is tamasic tap. That austerity which is practiced out of a foolish notion with a self-torture for the purpose of destroying another is declared to be tamasic. I want to do the tapasya so that I get some kind of a boon so that I can hurt others. That is a tamasic. So self-torture cannot bring about any unveiling of the true beauty of the soul. Now let's look at the charity. That gift which is given to one who does nothing in return, knowing it to be a duty to give in a fit place and time to a worthy person, that gift is held to be sattvic. So giving we must do, but no conditions attached. Giving it to the right person at the right time. The recipient should be one who does no service in return. That means you don't say that I'm giving it to you, you give this back to me. It could be a name on the wall or an announcement. Gita insists that we must use our faculty of discrimination and see whether the charities, we think about the charity where we are giving beforehand, but once we give, just no conditions attached. What is a Rajasic charity? That gift which is given with a view to receiving in return. It's almost like a business relationship. Looking for fruit again, or reluctantly. So whenever we give reluctantly, it is Rajasic. Whenever we think that what will we get after giving, that is Rajasic. When we do it as a duty, that's a sattvic. And what is tamasic giving? That gift that is given at a wrong place and time to unworthy person, without respect or with the insult, is declared to be tamasic. So charity must come from within as an expression of an irrepressible urge of our own heart. Intelligent charity must spring from the abundance felt within the individual. If a person is feeling impoverished by his giving, that is not a charity. Now, all of this he said, somebody might say that, my God, it's just where I'm going to do the research, how I'm going to find out if the time is right and the place is right or not. Or even I'm eating also, how do I know it is a truly sattvic food or not? Or the tapasya I'm doing. In the following verses, he's giving us some instructions with a view to perfect our actions. He says, Om Tat Sat, this has been declared to be the triple designation of Brahma. By that were created formally the Brahman Vedas and sacrifices. So in other words, he says, whenever you give the charity or when you eat also, when you do the yajna also, start with the Om. Om Tat Sat. Remember God. Do your homework before, but while doing it, remember only God. That's what it really means. It's a nirdesh. A nirdesh generally given in ritualism is that by performing which any defects in the sacred worship are removed. That's called a nirdesh. Because each action, no doubt, has its fruit, but the fruit depends not only on the action, but also on the purity of the intentions and the motives. So with this nirdesh, we are purifying our motives. Om, what does Om mean? Om means absolute, truth, God, unborn, whatever you wanna, however you wanna name it, Om. Tat. Tat means my eternal goal. That is my goal, Tat. And Sat means the reality, existence. So by saying Om Tat Sat, we are remembering it all. We are remembering God also. We are remembering our goal also. And we are remembering what is true also. So if you want to summarize this chapter, we can see that all human activities and endeavors can be classified under two heads. One is ahar. That means the activities undertaken for the maintenance of the body. So not just the food which we eat, everything else falls in that category. And the second is the activities that nourishes the culture by all cooperative activities with the dedicated actions, yajna, all charities, the dan, and all intelligent methods of self-control. So this is what he has mentioned in this chapter. And he says all of this, either you can do it sattvically or rajsikly or tamsikly. But when are we to use the term Om? He says in verse number 24, with the utterance of Om are begun the acts of sacrifice, gifts, and austerity, as enjoined in the scriptures always by the students of Brahma. Okay, so Om, that's why whenever we do the yajna, whenever we do any kind of a mantra recitation, Om, remembrance of God. And Tat is used uttering Tat without aiming at the fruits. So instead of thinking about the fruit, you are aiming towards the final goal. Tat. So the work in the field of yajna or tap or dan with the mind that is tuned up to Tat, the universal oneness of the scriptural truth, is to work with no ego, and consequently, we need to redeem ourselves from the limitations of the matter. And Sat, verse number 26, he says the word Sat is used in the sense of reality and of goodness, and also Uparth, the word Sat is used in the sense of an auspicious act. So auspicious act is a Sat. So Sat is used to mean both reality and goodness. Verse number 27, he says, steadfastness in sacrifice, austerity, and gift is also called Sat. And also action in connection with these for the sake of the Supreme is called Sat. So if these chantings are undertaken with faith and sincerity, the seeker's mind expands and gives up all its selfishness and arrogance. That's what we need to give up. And the last verse he says, whatever is sacrificed, given or performed, and whatever austerity is practiced without faith, it is called asat. See, sat is proper, asat is not. So if you don't have a faith, we can be doing all of that, but we don't have a faith, then it's asat. It's not for here or hereafter. So that means there's no use of it. It's not going to benefit you here or even afterwards. So it's like a conclusive statement that whatever we give, whatever we do, we got to undertake it with faith, not without faith. We got to believe in it. So Shraddha, you remember the chapter started with the word Shraddha? So he says Shraddha is unavoidable. And without Shraddha, no progress is possible. No evolution can ever take place without Shraddha. Even in this world, if we don't have a faith in our, even a person who cuts our hair will be very disturbed, or faith in a doctor, faith in a lawyer, faith in a teacher. And over here, we are talking about faith in God. So the factor that determines the quality and quantity of the result is our faith in our own efficiency and goodness, and in our all the fields of our activity. But remember that, make sure that faith is sattvic. Sattvic. Okay. So this is the end of this chapter. So let's do the Shanti Path also. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om.